YouTube, what's cooking? It's Chef Gilly here to bring you a first of hopefully what will be a series on my favorite Warzone class setups. And today we are breaking down a full send class setup here in Warzone. So with that underway, let's get into the meat and potatoes here of the video and discuss what I like to use here in Warzone. So let's get the more boring stuff out of the way here and discuss perks. My perks generally consist of the same perks almost in every class, but for the purpose of today, we're just going to focus on the ones that make up this class. We're using EOD to help limit rocket spamming and hopefully keep you alive in those situations. We're running Overkill because this is a full send class setup, so we do need to have the capability of having both of our primaries early on to help us in longer and close range engagements. And for our final perk, we are using Amped. The reason I use Amped is quite simple. It helps with my weapon swap speed, and to me, I find that just way more beneficial than I do using Tracker, where the footsteps are very limited in the range that you can see them, so I prefer to stick to Amped for that reason. Segueing quickly right into our equipment, I almost always use C4. C4 is just my lethal of choice. I think it provides the most options for uses. You can use it for getting rid of vehicles quickly. With one little C4 you could blow up pretty much any vehicle in the game minus the truck, aka Bertha. Or a helicopter sometimes takes two. I don't know, it's kind of weird about that. But regardless, C4 is viable for that. It's great for chunking armor quickly when you run into groups of people. And all around, it's very useful. You can get it pretty far if you know how to. If you jump when you throw it, you can actually get it a pretty decent distance. So it's just a very viable weapon in general. Or, sorry, not weapon, equipment. And then for this class setup, we are using an oddity here. Instead of my heartbeat sensor, I am using stun grenades. Now, stun grenades, I'm pretty sure you can all kind of guess why I would use them. If you're rushing people a lot, that means you're going to be pretty close to people. It helps if you can give yourself a leg up in 50-50 gunfights and ensure that you can have an advantage in those gunfights. So, that is why I use stun grenades. If you prefer flashbangs or hell even gas grenades, you can use them and they'll work fine as well, but for me, my personal preference, stun grenade is the best. It slows them down. It kind of blinds them, not really. I mean, the flash obviously is supposed to do that more so, but it does affect their movement, which is a big reason why I use stun grenades over flashbangs. Moving off of our equipment, let's talk about the first weapon, the first primary in this class, and that is the M13. Now you might be thinking, wow, M13, that's kind of a shock. Now, some people will know that the M13 is actually a very viable weapon in Warzone, others may not, and that's why I'm bringing this up today, and I wanted to bring it into this class setup because the M4 and the Grau is almost definitely the meta right now in terms of assault rifles, just like the MP5 and the MP7 dominate the SMG category. So that being said, I worked with the M13, and I have found a class setup that I really enjoy. So let's talk about what attachments I'm using on the M13. The first attachment I'm using is a staple of most of my classes. I'll always use this attachment, and that's Monolithic Suppressor. Those of you who've watched other build guides from me, or, well, not me, from other YouTubers or whoever, you will know that most people use that attachment. And that's for good reason. The Monolithic Suppressor provides you with damage range as well as sound suppression, which is incredible. If you think back to any previous Call of Duty, first of all, we only had one suppressor, but now we have three, and one of them actually does the opposite of what suppressors used to feel like they did, which was hurt your range. So this is just an all-around great attachment for getting in those longer range engagements, especially with the next attachment we are about to talk about, which is the Tempest Marksman Barrel. This barrel pretty much segues right with the Monolithic Suppressor, as they both provide damage range, while the Marksman Barrel also provides bullet velocity, and recoil control. Now, just a quick overview of bullet velocity. Bullet velocity just means that it'll cut back on the time it would take for your bullet to hit the target, which means, in theory, you're also going to be able to hit people at range more. Recoil control is always great. It helps with the vertical recoil of your gun. So that just makes this attachment an all-around great attachment, and it's what ultimately kind of helps make this gun into that laser beam that it can be with this build. So then segueing into another attachment to help make this gun into that laser beam, and ultimately is like the final piece to that puzzle in theory, is the Commando Foregrip. A lot of people are familiar with the Commando Foregrip in this game, and it's very popular right now for good reason. Commando Foregrip focuses on recoil stabilization instead of recoil control. For those of you who don't know, the difference between stabilization and control is they're basically polar opposites. Recoil control, as I said earlier, focuses on the vertical recoil, which is up and down, whereas recoil stabilization helps maintain your left to right recoil, or your horizontal. So that will ensure that your gun doesn't shoot to the right or to the left on you when you're using it, which is incredible because that's the hardest recoil to deal with in any type of shooter. Up and down is easy. You just hold back on the mouse or hold down on your analog, whatever console you're playing on, whatever it is. It's not that hard to counteract that. Segueing into our final two attachments here, we have the 60 round mag. This provides us with the most amount of ammo possible for the M13 in one magazine, which allows us to keep going in those range engagements, or if we get into fights with multiple people, it ensures that we don't have to worry about reloading as often because we will have the 60 rounds to work with. So that's why I use that. Then for our final attachment, this one's more of a personal preference attachment, so do with it what you will. I use the Cronin Mini Reflex Optic. It is definitely the smallest reflex in the game, but I find it's just been my favorite optic since the beginning of this game, even before Warzone was out. I always used it. So I use it here on the M13. To me, the iron sights on the M13 are not very good, so I feel like this is a great way to counteract that and provide you a little bit more visibility at those long-range engagements. If you don't like that, there's obviously other options. There's so many reflexes and other optics in this game. Change it, find which works for you. Now moving into our final and our second primary here, which is also the final item on this list to discuss, is the MP5. Yes, now we are using a meta weapon here, and I'm sure if you were just listening earlier, like, oh, I wanted to provide something that was different from the meta, but I also wanted to keep it a little bit realistic and give you guys one gun that can compete against the other metas efficiently and effectively by just using the meta. I will have another video later on where we could discuss this in the future if you guys are interested, and I'll have some other options that are not meta. Anyways, back to our MP5. First attachment is the Monolithic Integral Suppressor. Now, the difference between this and the regular Monolithic is not very much. They pretty much do the same thing, except the Integral Suppressor also gives bullet velocity, which comes with some damage range stats that people actually can't, it's not visibly see, you can't see it. But thanks to the YouTuber Exclusive Ace, little shout out for him here, who tested it and found out that the damage range profiles on the Integral is actually higher than the regular Monolithic suppressors. So because of that, I now run the Integral version instead of the just straight up muzzle attachment. Then for our foregrip, we use the Merc Foregrip. Now the Merc Foregrip is a great attachment focused a little bit more towards mobility and maneuverability instead of its counterparts. It does provide some recoil control, which is great, but it also allows you to have a little bit of hip fire accuracy, which is pretty important on most SMGs, seeing as you're gonna use them in close quarters. And if you have that ability to know that you can hip fire and still maintain your shots, then that's really helpful. Moving forward from there, we have the 45 round magazine, and I'm not going to go into this too much, just to keep this video a little bit shorter here for you guys. Same reason as the 60 rounder. That's why I don't use the 10mm. Just you need more ammo so that's why I do it. Now we are on to our final attachments. We have the stippled grip tape. This is probably one of my go-to attachments for most SMGs in the game, and definitely an attachment I consider using a lot for some of my ARs as well. So, stippled grip tape is great because it helps reduce that aim down sight speed, increase it, and as well as increase your sprint to fire speed. Both of those components are very important to your success in gunfights, seeing as you die so quickly in this game. So it is, if you can have that, half a second, whatever, where you aim in faster than they do, that could be the difference between you living or dying. So, for our final attachment on the MP5, it is not an attachment at all. We actually use sleight of hand. And the reason that I use sleight of hand is just very simple. The MP5's reload speed out of all the SMGs really sucks. It is really bad. So, for that reason, I use sleight of hand to allow me to get back into my gunfights quicker. Little tidbit here at the end for you guys. Just a little bonus tip. If you guys need a fully loaded class, I highly recommend them for late game. If you ever need ammo for your MP5, just get rid of that sleight of hand, put fully loaded on it, take the Commando Foregrip off of the M13, and put fully loaded there, and there you go. Now you have two classes made out of the same build, but the one provides you with full ammunition right out of spawn, which can be very important in late game. So with that said, if you guys enjoyed today's video, please be sure to consider smashing that like button, subscribe if you're new, ring that bell icon to get notified every time I upload a new video. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch, Chef Gilly, and check out the Gilly Brigade on Discord, where we have loads of different chats you can get involved in, from Warzone to Star Wars to Borderlands. Have a great rest of your day, and as always, stay spicy.